hey, deserving listeners, love is blind. Let's see what happens. And then I'm going to react, as I usually do.
Securities, and I'm sure that there is, like everyone is feeling that way, but you can choose to act differently. You get to choose how you react to your feelings most of the time. And when that's handled really meanly or like sabotagely or like icky, that's not, I'm sorry, no, that's bad character.
All right, so to catch you up, Bliss likes Zach, and Bliss knows that Zach is also, entertaining a possible relationship, ongoing relationship with Irina. And in the common area, Bliss is picking up on things from Irina. I don't know if they've showed us anything directly, but we could imagine what Irina has done, or at least said things that got around to Bliss. And it makes me wonder if either Irina and or Micah were not on the cast, if this whole show would have been different. If you've ever been in a group, and I'm guessing you have, but groups that I think of are my classes, my students in my classes. Every class feels different emotionally, particularly by the end of the term, because we've gotten to know each other. Classes are small. Classes can be as small as 3 people. So there's a feel to it. And when you have an element like Micah and or Irina, especially the both of them, there were different vibes and emotions, and it affects everyone, because we tend to think of ourselves as individuals. So if I, as a student, enter into a class and say there was Micah and Irina, and they were giving off that energy in that class, and then I have another class afterwards, and Micah and Irina are not in that class, and say it's a lot of the same people except for Micah and Irina, I tend to think of myself as like, well, I'm the same person in both contexts. But an argument could be made that, sure, you're the same person, but the way you see things, the way you feel, the subconscious modes that you go into might be very different, and also the collective mode that we all go into. It's very important to understand that we aren't individuals when we enter into a group. We cohere into roles and into a vibe. We act like one cohesive unit. You can zoom out from the individuals and look at the unit and see behaviors of the unit. For example, one observed phenomenon that is very known to us systems thinkers, us family therapists, is that when you have, say, someone who suffers from addiction in the family, and they're also scapegoated by the family, and say that person goes through recovery on their own and becomes sober, a lot more healthy, they get a lot of help, support. Well, the organization, the organism of the family system still has a sickness, still has disorder, and thus needs someone to be the scapegoat. So someone will volunteer and be elected. It happens often at the same time. They're both appointed, and subconsciously they will step into it voluntarily, so to speak, to become the next scapegoat. It might not be related to addiction. It might be related to defiance, or they might have other kinds of issues. Who knows? But there needs to be that scapegoat. There needs to be that focus. And so although an individual has changed, the system has not. In fact, the person who recovered might even turn around and scapegoat the other person the way they were scapegoated before. That's why we know that in order to really help people, we have to treat the system often. And then when we zoom out even further to a society or a subgroup of a society, that also plays a role, right? So in the way those subgroups interact with other subgroups, and oppression and marginalization and privilege and all those kinds of things absolutely affect things, right? So when Micah and Irina enter into this arena, then you just wonder if that changes everyone's vibe. It raises the suspicion and makes everyone on edge and creates rifts and the need to band against. And I think they're being scapegoated. We could argue that the other cast members have the right to defend themselves and to talk crap. So it's just a little observation I hadn't thought of before. And think about the things that are at stake on this show. The people are trying to meet their soulmate, and there could be moments or vibes or emotions or circumstances that could make or break the rest of their life. It's a lot is hanging in the balance for these people. So for Bliss, she is picking up on that from Irina, and she is wanting to tell Zach, and does tell him in a very indirect but pretty obvious way, look, I got to tell you what's happening in the common area with Irina. she is, and if anything, Bliss is being nice about it. I think Bliss is being charitable in her description, because another way that I think Bliss could say is, look, Zach, I got to tell you, Irina, she has some serious emotional issues. She's vindictive, not just to me. Everyone sees it. Her and Micah, there's something wrong with them. And so not only should you know, whether you choose me or not, I feel bad for you if you end up with her. Also, I want to be with you, so I guess I'm biased. But also, can you pass along to Paul what's going on with Micah? Because we're seeing stuff that I'm guessing Paul has not seen. So, you should know that. And that's probably the right thing to do, right? It would be, I think, immoral not to tell Zach what he is facing, what he's heading into. On the flip side, of course, this looks like she's being conniving or talking shit about someone behind their back. I mean, she is technically, but sometimes there's a function to that, right? And I think given what we've seen from Irina, since it's so extreme, that Bliss should tell Zach, right? So, that's what she's doing. And let's see how Zach reacts to this, because I could see him also, because up until this point, at least what we've seen, Zach has seen the mature side of Irina. I don't know if that's her main mode or 50-50, or it's a manipulation and her real mode is this immature jerk face. I don't know. There's a lot of possibilities, but there's a pretty good chance that Zach has never seen what Bliss and the others have seen. Also, it's possible Zach is not convinced, right? That he's like, well, you're biased. So it would be hard to convey if you're Bliss. How do you convey that? How do you tell Zach? I guess this is what I would say. I would say something like, look, Zach, this is going to sound like I'm biased because I want to be with you, and I know that you're also thinking about being with Irina, but I have to tell you, one, because I want to be with you and I feel like we're a better match than you and Irina for a variety of reasons, which I'll get into, but also I care about you as a human being, and even if you don't choose me, I just do not think it's a good idea. I couldn't live with myself if I didn't tell you what I have seen, and I'm guessing you don't know this, and take it or leave it, but what I have seen, and this sounds funny to say, but a lot of the women on our side, we have concluded that Irina has some serious problems. She is hostile, flippant, uncaring, lacking of empathy, ridiculing, cruel to others. I could give you some examples, and this isn't people just trying to be nice to me. It's beyond the pale. It's not just minor issues. At first, I thought maybe I was just being biased against her, but over time, and certainly she can be sweet. She can be a nice person. She has a nice side to her, and I've seen that. But the way that she deals with things, and maybe she's threatened or jealous or something, and that's normal, and I can relate to those feelings, but the way she deals with it, and the way she just is, and the way she's with Micah, it is marked. It is concerning. And so I just feel like you should know that, because I care about you. Of course, I want to be with you, but so maybe all this is you're going to take as me being biased, but I couldn't live with myself if I didn't just say something. Maybe I'd say something like that. I don't know. Let's see what Zach says.
Honestly, Bliss, I could see myself marrying either of you.
This is like a test for me too. Like, does Zach have good judgment?
I guess so. There's a implication there that she's saying, based on what you just said, I don't trust your judgment. He has not seen what you have seen, Bliss. He has seen a particular side of Bliss, someone who really cares. It's his birthday, and so Bliss made cupcakes, and Irina was saying like, oh, I'm not really like I can't remember the word that she said, like, I'm not that kind of girlfriend, or I'm not that kind of wife person who is maternal in that way, or considerate or gift giving. And I don't know what version she was saying, but anyway, Irina was saying that. And so she had her date with Zach, and she comes out and says, hey, I feel bad that I didn't make anything. I feel, like you're going to hate me because I didn't do it. I'm not a good friend, and I'm sorry. And she said a lot of really great things. It was a very appropriate, very empathetic, very self-deprecating way of telling Zach that she feels bad and she wishes she were different, and she understands that maybe she's being not caring or something. It was great. So what Zach has seen is different. So for her to imply that she thinks that he lacks judgment is, I don't think, fair.
Can I trust, like, your ability to like truly like judge someone.
I
would imagine for Bliss that it's a really difficult emotional space to live in when you are all in on someone. She's all in on Zach. She wants to marry Zach. She wants to spend the rest of her life with Zach. And you hear from him that there's a big part of him that wants to marry Irina. It's hurtful. You can be sad about that. Like, ugh. You could even say to yourself, well, even if you do choose me, I don't know if I want to be with you. No offense, but I don't know. I want to live the dream of someone that's all in with me and only me. And to hear you say that, I appreciate it, but it's not my dream, not my ideal. So, I could see that. But she's criticizing him, which maybe she's doing on purpose to push things over. It's like, screw it. I'm going to tear it down. I don't know.
I don't know if I've ever met somebody who I feel like I understand like you.
It's a weird way of putting it. On a certain level, yeah, you want to be able to, quote unquote, understand your partner, meaning that you don't have to take guesses. You can relate to the individual. But I don't know, it sounded in a certain way like I have fully encapsulated your simplicity. I don't know. Let's see what she.
And I know what I feel with you. And if you're still unsure about that after 10 straight hours of dating with Bliss, I can't handle that. You have had 10 straight hours with her. Yeah. I've been waiting all day to talk to you.
10 hours straight. I think I heard about that from some of the other cast members, right? Not personally, but they would talk about it in interviews that sometimes they would spend, toward the end of the week, they get a zero in on someone and spend a long time, but 10 hours straight. Wow. I mean, it makes sense, right? If you're in love with someone and you don't have anything else to do, it's like, why not? And I think they also will watch movies together or listen to music or just hang out. She's saying that. It makes it. Irina, when she's with Zach, she's not the same. When she's with Zach, she seems like for lack of a better term, a regular person with normal levels of maturity and empathy. It's hard to know, but she is expressing that it was hard. Because you notice when you're in the common area, it's like, okay, well, I know where Bliss is right now. Okay, another hour, Bliss comes back. Maybe Bliss even talks about other people. You overhear it. And you're like, oh, 10 hours. Wow. So I'm guessing, you would imagine that Irina would say like, well, maybe I'm not going to get chosen. And then when she meets up with him, he's like, I don't know what to do. I'm still on the fence. And she's like, if you're still on the fence after 10 hours of spending time, I don't understand. And she said earlier that she was thinking about just going home. I'm guessing she was saying that as the 10-hour date was going on. She's just like, screw it. I'm going to get out of here. That does fit with my conceptualization of her personality of being, I don't know, for lack of a better term, a tough persona when she is threatened or sad or worried or something, feeling rejected, to put on a tough persona.
As all these things, I know that I may not have the best vocabulary or like these fancy words that I say to you to impress you. And maybe Bliss has those. She's also way older than me. Like, I'm 25 years old and she's probably closer to your age, and maybe you see her more as like wife material, but like deep down in your heart.
It's interesting this season. I don't know if we've seen anything like this on previous seasons where they will refer to the other people. Because, of course, in a lot of ways, Irina knows Bliss more than he does, or at least in a different way. Irina knows a lot about Bliss. There's a lot of time that she's spent hanging out. I mean, maybe Irina doesn't really know Bliss at all because they've avoided each other or something, but Irina knows things and is obviously thinking about it. It's like, what does Zach see in her? And she's making comparisons and she's laying it out, which is interesting to hear her describe that. That does kind of fit with how I see her, or how she's being presented, how she's presenting the things that she just said.
With you, the connection is just fire. I'm so drawn to you. And I think one concern I have is I think you're a little bit more vicious than I am.
Okay, maybe he was listening to Bliss and taking it. I don't know where that comes from. I would imagine that that's true. I mean, maybe Zach has picked up on an edge to Irina in all their time together. Of course, we only see these little snippets. They spend a lot of time together in the pods. But then she smiles. So, yeah. Vicious you know, it's not a great quality in a partner, depending on how you're looking at it. So maybe he's going to go with Bliss. But we haven't seen a lot of Bliss, which makes me wonder if the because usually they zero in on people that are going to stand the test of time in the show. So I have a suspicion he's going to choose Irina. Let's watch.
Bliss, she doesn't like you. That doesn't make you a bad person.
If you think something about me is not kind or vicious, like you said, like I cannot believe you said that to me because it's a little shocking. If that's what you feel talking from our conversation, that says enough to me. So
let me finish. I don't think you're vicious.
So she's doing that smiley smirk again, and I'm apt to conceptualize it as nervousness. I want to believe that she's in it to win it. She really does want to be with Zach, or at the very least wants to take it to the next level. I imagine a lot of these individuals are like, yeah, sure, I'll say yes to the proposal, or yeah, I'll propose, but I'm not necessarily going to marry them. I mean, I will have a choice. I wonder if a lot of them are like, well, I mean, we'll see. So somewhere in that zone for her. So either she is genuine and authentic in that way and real in that way, and she smiles out of nervousness, or it's just a habit of hers. It's not like she's smirking or smiling in that way, like she's joking or that she thinks this is funny. She's embarrassed, maybe that's why or she is not taking it seriously. She's immature. She doesn't really know what she's agreeing to. She's just playing a game. Who knows? I tend not to go in that direction. That could be the case, of course. Those things do happen. It's not the norm, but it's possible. I don't know. Which one do you think? Or is there another option?
Or you feel like someone has hurt someone you care about. You will hurt them back. I understand that. She doesn't know who you are.
Interesting. Seems like he touched on a nerve, which is, I think, a good thing, good development. He says, I think that when someone hurts you, that you will hurt them back. And that, that touched on a nerve for her. So maybe this is a good turn of events.
I know that you have this deep heart. I want you to know how beautiful I really think you are, because I do think you're incredibly beautiful on the inside.
I don't care how you fucking look like Zach. I don't care if you're like a dweeb or a nerd or tall or short.
If you look on at least a neutral, if not positive light for Irina, she has a way with words, and it fits her personality, right? She's not going to write a Hallmark card, but it is her version of a Hallmark card. What she just said, it could be a very sweet thing, what she's saying. So I wonder if for Zach, he has had long conversations with Irina, and even after hearing what Bliss said, he concludes, yeah, she can be vicious, and that does concern me and worry me. And I'm worried that she's going to target me when she gets upset at me at some point in the future with that viciousness that Bliss has observed. But I know that underneath that is a good heart and a good person who is defended at times and is sensitive and will come across as a mean person to cover it up. I'm reading into it, but it sounded like that's what he was getting at. And yeah, that would be my conceptualization too. I mean, that is the direction that I would lean towards, because that is the more common conceptualization that I'll land on with people like Irina once I get to know them. And it's hard, especially back in the day when I worked with teenagers and their families, their parents, their schools, and there would be a percentage of them that would present as very above it all, very mean to people, very flippant, very callous and uncaring, maybe cruel, rejecting, like nothing matters, and they have a tough exterior. And over time, you can become convinced, even as a therapist, even though you're trained or oriented in a way to recognize people's hearts and their vulnerabilities. If someone's really good at covering that up, it's hard to hold on to that conceptualization for some people. And, I would find myself concluding, I think this person just doesn't care. And if I stuck with it long enough and kept working on it, eventually I would see that soft side that Irina is presenting right now, the vulnerable, the real side, the side we might be able to relate to. So we can imagine for Irina that this would be a problem. Remember Stephanie, the fart in a jar woman? I say that in all seriousness. That's what she's known for and what she actually likes to be famous for. She said she made, $100,000 selling literally her farts in jars online. And so she talked about how when she was young, she immigrated from Russia or Ukraine or Poland. Sorry for not for remembering which place it was. And she didn't know the language. She, I think, immigrated when she was in the first grade or something. And she was just thrown into a classroom, at least according to her. And for the first year, she just sat in a corner and couldn't communicate it with anyone because she didn't speak English yet. And she didn't know anyone, and she was ostracized. I don't know if bullied, but at the very least, this constant sense of rejection and disconnect and feeling like you're inferior, and that'll do a number on you. Well, for Irina, she immigrated too. What did she say when she was 4? That's a little different because you're not in primary school, but you could imagine that the language barrier that may or may not have been present, who knows, she might have been learning English since she was a kid. It's not usual for that to happen, but it could have been. She came from Russia, Irina. At the very least, the cultural differences, the customs that are different, the religious differences can really alienate you, and you can be bullied, maybe, I don't know. And then you got to deal with it somehow. And one of the ways to deal with it is by getting out ahead of it and being the bully and being the tough person, someone that doesn't care. You can't rattle me. That's my defense. Fine. You're going to bully me. I don't care. I don't have a heart. And if you hit me, I'm going to hit you twice as hard back. And I don't care what the consequences are because I'm sick of it. So people can develop that. Obviously, for Stephanie, I think she dealt with it in a different way. We could speculate as to what that is. But at the very least, for both of them, there's some attachment disruption. You're ripped away from your extended family, your culture, your place. Maybe you have friends, obviously, that you've developed up to that point, and it's very disruptive. It's in the direction of being abandoned by your parents. It's not as severe usually, but it's in that direction. And of course, being abandoned by your parents, psychologically, emotionally, will often be a factor in different issues later on in life, mental disorders, attachment issues, behavioral problems, addiction. And being ripped away from your community and your people and having to move to a strange land where you don't understand anyone and everyone is ostracizing you because of your difference. Who knows what Irina went through, but we can imagine. We can imagine that Irina developed that persona, and Zach can see through it. And maybe this is a match made in heaven for that reason. I don't know. Okay, well, let's adjourn there. Everyone, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.